One day you looked in the mirror and noticed something you never paid attention to before. The gray hairs, the tired eyes, the extra weight that wasn't there 10 years ago. And suddenly, a thought crosses your mind. Where did all that time go? You remember the goals you said you would start next year, the business idea you never pursued, the health checkup you kept postponing, the family vacation you promised but never planned, the phone call you meant to make, the book you wanted to write, the G you were certain you had plenty of time for. But life kept moving. And now you're standing face to face with the truth most people realize too late. Time doesn't slow down because you're not ready. In fact, the older you get, the faster it seems to move. That's why there are certain truths that become more important with age, not because they suddenly appear, but because the consequences of ignoring them become impossible to hide. Here are 8 truths that matter more with every passing year. The first truth is later comes faster than you think. The quiet truth that time moves even when your plans do not. Most people never decide to waste years. Nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, I think I'll spend the next decade following my dreams. It happens much more quietly than that. We tell ourselves small stories. I'll start after this busy month. I'll focus on my health after this project. I'll spend more time with my family when things settle down. And those reasons sound reasonable. They sound responsible. But life has a funny sense of humor. Things rarely settle down. There is always another bill, another deadline, another obligation, another reason to postpone what matters. One day turns into 1 week. 1 week becomes 1 year. Then one morning you're standing in your kitchen holding a cup of coffee, staring out the window, wondering how someone who was just waiting a little longer somehow became 10 years older. The strange thing about time is that it never argues with you. It simply keeps walking while you stand still. Think about the number of times you've promised yourself something important. Maybe it was losing weight, maybe it was writing that book, maybe it was starting a business, changing careers, learning a skill, fixing your finances, or finally taking that dream trip you keep talking about. You didn't quit on the dream. You didn't reject it. You simply placed it on a shelf marked later. And that shelf gets crowded. Very crowded. It becomes like that drawer in every house where random things disappear forever. You open it looking for one battery and somehow find old receipts, broken charges, mysterious keys, and a pen that stopped working during the last presidential election. Dreams often end up in that same drawer. Not because they weren't important, but because they were always waiting for a better time. The problem is that later behaves like a mirage in the desert. You keep walking toward it, but it keeps moving further away. Have you noticed that? The future always seems to have more free time than today. Yet, when the future arrives, it looks exactly like today did. Busy, demanding, and full of reasons to delay. I once heard a story about a man named David. For 15 years, he talked about learning to play the piano. He loved music. He watched videos. He read articles. He even bought a beautiful piano that sat proudly in the corner of his living room. Every guest admired it. Every guest asked if he played. And every time he laughed and said, not yet, but soon. Soon became his favorite word. Soon this, soon that. One day, his daughter sat down at that piano and started taking lessons herself. Within a few years, she could play songs that moved people to tears. David watched her perform and realized something painful. The piano had never been the problem. The lessons were never the problem. The time was never really the problem. The habit of postponing was the problem. And how many of us are doing the same thing in different areas of life? We buy the treadmill and don't walk. We purchase the books and don't read. We save ideas in our phones and never act on them. Sometimes we're collecting possibilities instead of creating progress. The deeper truth is that procrastination rarely comes from laziness. It often comes from fear wearing a clever disguise. Fear of failing, fear of looking foolish, fear of being judged, fear that our effort won't be enough, so we delay. Delaying feels safer. If we never begin, we never have to face disappointment. But there is a hidden cost. Every postponed action quietly teaches your mind that tomorrow matters more than today. And after enough tomorrows, your confidence begins to shrink. Not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself to trust intentions more than actions. Imagine planting a tree. If you delay planting it for 10 years, the tree doesn't stay frozen waiting for you. The shade you could have enjoyed 10 years later simply never exists. The fruit never grows. The branches never spread. Life works the same way. Every delayed beginning delays every future reward attached to it. The clock doesn't punish you, it just keeps ticking. And yet there's something incredibly hopeful about this truth. Because if years can slip away one day at a time, they can also be transformed one day at a time. The same force that quietly creates regret can quietly create progress. A single walk today, a single page written today, a single difficult phone call made today, a single hour invested today. Small actions seem almost laughably insignificant in the moment. They don't feel heroic, they don't feel dramatic. But neither does a seed when it first enters the ground. The miracle happens later. Real change often looks boring at the beginning. It looks ordinary. It looks small. But small things have power, enormous power. The people we admire are often not the people with the best plans. They are the people who stopped negotiating with later. They stopped waiting for perfect conditions. They stopped treating time like an unlimited resource. And instead, they chose now. Not because they had certainty, not because they had guarantees, but because they finally understood that later arrives much faster than anyone expects. The second truth is your body keeps score, a quiet but relentless truth that your body remembers what your mind keeps postponing. It remembers the sleepless nights you called just this once. It remembers the meals eaten in a rush, the stress swallowed without a word, the walks you promised yourself you would start tomorrow. The strange thing is that the body rarely complains loudly in the beginning. It's more polite than that. It whispers. A little less energy in the morning, a little stiffness when getting out of bed, a little discomfort climbing stairs, small signals, tiny notes slipped under the door. But most people ignore them because life feels busy. There are meetings to attend, bills to pay, children to raise, responsibilities waiting at every corner. So the whispers get ignored and the body waits patiently, quietly, like an old accountant sitting in a dusty office writing everything down, every choice, every habit, every delay. It doesn't judge you. It simply records the story you're writing. Have you ever noticed how differently we treat our bodies compared to almost everything else we own? Someone buys a new car and suddenly it gets regular maintenance, careful attention, and immediate repairs when something sounds strange. Yet that same person may ignore warning signs from their own body for years. It's almost funny when you think about it. Some people know the exact service schedule for their vehicle but can't remember the last time they checked on their own health. They hear one strange noise from the engine and panic. Meanwhile, their knees have been sending warning letters for 3 years and they're like, it's probably fine. We laugh because we've all done it in some form. We assume the body will keep showing up no matter how we treat it, like a loyal friend who never gets tired. But even the most loyal friend eventually feels neglected. The body doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for partnership. A little care, a little movement, a little respect. Not someday, today. I remember hearing about a man named Raj who spent most of his adult life saying he was too busy to exercise. He worked hard, he provided for his family, he always had good intentions. Every January, he would buy new workout clothes. Every February, they became very expensive closet decorations. He joked about it constantly. I'm getting ready mentally, he would say. Everyone laughed. If things laughed too, years passed. Then one day he found himself breathless after a short walk with his grandson. Not a marathon, not a mountain climb, just a simple walk through a park. And for the first time, the reality hit him. It wasn't one missed workout that brought him there. It was thousands of tiny choices stacked together over decades. That's how life usually works. We imagine consequences arriving like a lightning strike. Most of the time, they arrive like a sunset. So gradual that you barely notice the change until the whole sky looks different. The difficult part is that many people think health is something you deal with after everything else is handled, after work becomes easier, after the kids grow older, and after the schedule opens up, after the stress goes away. But life rarely becomes less demanding. In fact, for many adults, responsibilities multiply. And if health stays at the bottom of the list forever, eventually it climbs to the top, whether you want it to or not. The body has a way of getting your attention. not out of cruelty but necessity. Think about a house with a small leak in the roof. Ignore it for a week and nothing seems wrong. Ignore it for years and suddenly you're dealing with damage everywhere. The leak wasn't dramatic, the delay was. The same is true with the human body. Small habits seem harmless because their effects are invisible at first. Yet invisible does not mean absent. Seeds grow underground long before anyone sees a tree. And still, there is something deeply encouraging hidden inside this truth. The body also remembers kindness. It remembers the walk you took when you didn't feel like moving. It remembers the extra glass of water, the better meal, the earlier bedtime, the moment you chose care over convenience. Many people think they have waited too long. They look at the years behind them and feel discouraged. But the body is remarkably forgiving. Treat it with respect, and it often responds with surprising gratitude. Energy begins to return. Movement feels easier. Sleep becomes deeper. Even your mood changes. It's almost like discovering an old friend was never angry with you, only waiting for you to come back. Day by day, choice by choice, the story starts changing. Not through dramatic transformations, but through small acts of care repeated again and again, until one morning you wake up and realize your body has been listening all along. The third truth is relationships don't grow on intentions, they grow on attention, presence, and the small moments we often assume will always be there. Most people never wake up and decide to drift away from the people they love. No husband says, today I will slowly become distant from my wife. No parent says, I think I'll miss the precious years of my child's life. No son or daughter says, I'll stop making time for my parents. It happens much more quietly. Life gets busy. Work becomes demanding. The phone keeps ringing. The calendar fills up. We keep telling ourselves that the people we love will understand, and often they do. That's what makes it so dangerous. Love is patient, family is patient, good friends are patient, they wait, they forgive, they understand. Until one day, what was once a strong connection begins to feel like a memory being carried by habit instead of attention. Relationships are a lot like houseplants. They rarely send dramatic warnings. They simply stop blooming. One missed conversation doesn't hurt. One cancelled dinner doesn't hurt. But little by little, silence starts taking up space where connection used to live. Have you ever noticed how strange human beings can be? We will spend hours charging our phones because we panic when the battery reaches 10%. Yet we let important relationships run on 1% attention for years. We carefully update apps, organize files, and respond to strangers online, while the people sitting across from us wait for a real conversation. There is a funny scene happening in many homes today. The family gathers for dinner, everyone is together physically but mentally they're scattered across 5 different screens. A husband is checking emails, a wife is scrolling through videos, the kids are watching something. Everyone is connected to the world and disconnected from each other. And then years later, people wonder, what happened to our closeness? Nothing dramatic happened. That's the point. Distance usually doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like dust settling on furniture, so slowly that nobody notices, until one day they realize the room feels different. The relationship didn't break, it simply stopped being fed. I once heard a story about a man named Michael who worked incredibly hard for his family. Every decision he made was for them. Every extra shift, every late night, every sacrificed weekend. He loved his children deeply. There was no doubt about that. Yet whenever his young daughter asked him to play, he would smile and say, maybe later. Not because he didn't care. Because he was tired. Because work felt urgent. Because there would be more time tomorrow. Years passed. One evening, when his daughter was nearly grown, he came home early and asked if she wanted to spend time together. She smiled kindly and said she already had plans. It wasn't rude, it wasn't cruel, it was simply life moving forward. And in that moment he realized something painful. The little girl who used to wait excitedly by the door was gone. Not because he failed as a father, not because he lacked love, because opportunities have seasons, childhood has seasons, certain conversations have seasons, certain moments knock only once. The heartbreaking thing about time is that it never announces when a chapter is ending. The same truth applies to friendships, marriages, parents, and even the relationship we have with ourselves. Many people assume strong relationships survive automatically. They don't. They survive through maintenance, through checking in, through listening, through showing up when it's inconvenient. Think about an old bridge connecting two islands. Every day, tiny forces push against it. Wind, rain, time. If nobody maintains it, the damage slowly accumulates. Relationships work the same way. Daily stress, misunderstandings, busy schedules, responsibilities, all of these quietly pull people apart. That's why attention matters so much. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can give another person is not advice, money, or solutions. It's your full presence. Just being there, really there. Not halfway listening while looking at a screen, not nodding while thinking about tomorrow's meeting, just present. In a world full of distractions, presence has become a rare gift, and rare gifts carry tremendous value. What's beautiful is that relationships rarely demand perfection. They don't need grand speeches or expensive gestures. Most people simply want to feel seen. They want to feel remembered. They want to know they matter. A quick phone call, a shared laugh, a walk together, a meal without distractions. These moments seem ordinary while they're happening, almost too ordinary. Yet years later, they become the memories people treasure most. Nobody sits in old age wishing they had answered 5 more emails on a Tuesday afternoon. Nobody smiles remembering an extra hour spent worrying about things that never happened. But people remember conversations. They remember road trips. They remember sitting on a porch with a parent. They remember laughing so hard at a silly joke that tea almost came out of someone's nose. They remember being loved through attention, through presence, through time. Because relationships are not built from our intentions to connect someday. They are built from the moments we choose to protect today. That the fourth truth is nobody is coming to rescue your future. A powerful realization that your life changes the moment you stop waiting for someone else to change it for you. There comes the point in adulthood when this truth quietly taps you on the shoulder. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a gentle realization that grows stronger every year. You look around and notice that the life you have today is largely the result of choices, actions, delays, habits, and decisions that accumulated over time. For years, many of us secretly wait. We wait for motivation to arrive. We wait for confidence to appear. We wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect mentor, the perfect timing, the perfect set of circumstances. We imagine that one day everything will suddenly click into place like pieces of a puzzle falling together. But life rarely works that way. Life is more like standing at a train station where no train is scheduled to come. You can wait for hours, you can wait for years. You can even convince yourself that something wonderful is just around the corner. Meanwhile, the clock keeps moving and the platform slowly becomes your permanent address. When we're younger, it's easy to believe that someone will eventually point us in the right direction. A teacher, or boss, or parent, or lucky break. And sometimes people do help us. Help is real. Guidance is real. Support is real. But nobody can live your life for you. Nobody can exercise on your behalf. Nobody can save money on your behalf. Nobody can have difficult conversations for you. Nobody can pursue your dream while you watch from the sidelines. Yet many adults spend years acting like they are waiting for permission, waiting for someone to arrive with a map and say, "Here, this is exactly what you need to do." The funny part is that even if such a person appeared, many people would still hesitate. They would ask for more certainty, more guarantees, more proof. It's almost like standing in front of an open door and asking for another door just to be sure. Sometimes we laugh at that idea, but if we're honest, how often have we done exactly that in our own lives? I once heard about a woman named Anita who dreamed of starting a small bakery. She loved baking, friends loved her cakes, family encouraged her constantly. Yet every year, she found a new reason to postpone it. One year she needed more money. The next year she needed more knowledge. Then she needed a better location. Then she needed more confidence. Years passed. One afternoon she met a woman her age who had recently opened a bakery. The woman admitted she wasn't fully prepared. She didn't know everything. She made mistakes. She learned as she went. Anita was shocked. She realized she had spent years trying to remove every uncertainty before taking a single step. Meanwhile, someone else had been walking through uncertainty and learning from it. That day changed her perspective. She finally understood that clarity often comes after movement, not before it. We think action requires confidence, but very often confidence is the result of action. The first step creates information. The second step creates understanding. The third step creates momentum. Many people imagine their future self as some magical version of themselves, stronger, more disciplined, more focused, more courageous. They speak about this future self almost like a superhero waiting to arrive. Future me will handle it. Future me will get healthy. Future me will start the business. Future me will fix the finances. But here's the uncomfortable and slightly funny truth. Future you is just you. That's it. No cape, no dramatic background music, no special powers, just you, a little older, looking back at today's decisions. Imagine borrowing money from your future self. Every single day, a little effort postponed here, a little responsibility delayed there. Eventually, the debt becomes enormous. In future, you has to pay every penny. The person who suffers from today's avoidance is often the person you'll become tomorrow. That realization can feel heavy at first, but it can also be incredibly freeing. Because if nobody is coming to rescue your future, then nobody has the power to prevent you from building it either. Or the most transformative moments in life often begin when people stop waiting. Not when they become fearless, but when they become willing to start before they feel ready, willing to take imperfect action, willing to learn while moving. Think of a ship sitting in a harbor. It may look safe there, comfortable there, protected there, but ships are not built for permanent safety. They are built to sail. The same is true for human potential. You were never meant to spend your entire life preparing to live. You were meant to participate in it, to engage with it, to make mistakes in it, to grow through it. Every meaningful life is filled with unfinished plans, imperfect attempts, wrong turns, lessons learned, and unexpected victories. The people who create change are rarely the people who had all the answers. More often, they are the people who stopped waiting for rescue and started rowing with the oars they already had in their hands. The fifth truth is, small decisions become big destinies. The powerful reality that your life is often shaped far more by tiny daily choices than by a few dramatic moments. Most people imagine that life changes all at once. They picture a breakthrough, a promotion, a lucky opportunity, a life-changing event that suddenly transforms everything. But if you look closely at real life, that is rarely how the story unfolds. Most destinies are built quietly, silently, almost invisibly. A few extra minutes spent learning each day, a few dollars saved instead of spent, a few healthy choices repeated over and over, or the opposite, a few shortcuts, a few excuses, a few delays. None of them seem important in the moment. That's what makes them dangerous. Life doesn't usually send notifications saying, "Congratulations, this small choice will shape the next 10 years." Imagine steering a ship. If you change the direction by only a few degrees, the difference feels insignificant at first. For hours, the view looks almost the same. But after enough time, that tiny shift leads to a completely different destination. Human lives often change in exactly the same way. Think about how many times people dismiss a small action because it feels too insignificant to matter. It's only one missed workout. It's only one unnecessary purchase. It's only one evening wasted. It's only one difficult conversation I'll postpone. We tell ourselves these stories because the immediate consequence seems invisible. The mind loves immediate evidence. If nothing bad happens today, we assume nothing bad is happening at all. But life often works underground, like roots growing beneath the soil. You don't see them every day, yet they are determining what kind of tree will eventually stand above the ground. I once knew a man who started reading just 10 pages every night before bed. 10 pages, that's it. It sounded almost laughably small. Friends teased them. They said it wasn't enough to make a difference, yet years later, He had read hundreds of books, developed new skills, gained confidence, and completely changed the direction of his career. What looked insignificant on a Tuesday evening became extraordinary over time. The pages were small, the accumulation was not. At the same time, small negative choices can be equally powerful. That's the part people often underestimate. Imagine a tiny crack in a wall. On the first day, nobody notices it. On the second day, nobody worries about it. Months later, it seems a little larger. Years later, it has become a serious problem. The crack was never dramatic. The neglect was. I remember hearing about a woman who kept postponing saving money because she believed the amount she could save was too small. She would laugh and say, "What's the point?" So she waited for the day she could save something meaningful. That day never seemed to arrive. Years later, she realized she had lost more through waiting than she ever would have lost through starting small. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes people don't fail because they choose the wrong path. They fail because they underestimate the power of tiny steps. They keep waiting for giant actions while life is quietly being shaped by small ones. There's also something comforting about this truth. It means you do not have to change everything overnight. You don't have to become a completely different person by next week. Many people feel overwhelmed because they focus on the size of the mountain instead of the next step. They look at improving their health, finances, relationships, or career and immediately feel exhausted. Their mind starts calculating years of effort all at once. Then they quit before they begin. But life rarely asks for giant leaps. More often, it asks for consistency. Think about a mason building a wall. One brick seems almost meaningless, yet brick after brick, day after day, a structure appears where nothing existed before. The funny thing is that people admire the finished wall and forget how ordinary each brick looked when it was placed. Progress often feels boring while it's happening. Repetition isn't exciting. Discipline isn't always exciting. Yet many beautiful lives are built from things that felt very ordinary in the moment. As the years pass, this truth becomes impossible to ignore. You begin to notice how one conversation strengthened the relationship, how one skill opened a new opportunity, how one habit improved your health, how one decision changed your confidence. You also notice the reverse. One ignored responsibility became a burden, one delay became a pattern, one excuse became a lifestyle. Life starts revealing the hidden power of repetition, not through grand announcements but through results, quiet results, lasting results. And perhaps that's why so many people reach a certain age and suddenly realize that destiny was never some mysterious force floating above them. It was being built every day through choices so small they almost seemed unimportant. Every morning, every evening, every routine, every habit, every decision that nobody applauded, every action that seemed too small to matter, until one day it mattered more than almost everything else. So the sixth truth is comfort is more dangerous than failure, because failure wakes you up, but comfort can quietly put your dreams to sleep. Most people spend years trying to avoid failure. They fear embarrassment, they fear mistakes, they fear rejection, they fear looking foolish in front of others. Yet very few people fear comfort, even though comfort often causes far more damage. Failure usually announces itself. You know when you fail. It gets your attention. It forces reflection. It teaches lessons. Comfort is different. Comfort smiles at you. Comfort tells you everything is fine. Comfort hands you a soft chair and whispers, "Stay here a little longer." And before you know it, months have passed, then years. They're entire chapters of life. The danger is not that comfort feels bad. The danger is that it feels good. That's why so many people don't notice they're stuck. Their life isn't falling apart. Their life simply isn't moving forward. They're not miserable enough to change, but not fulfilled enough to feel alive. They exist in a strange middle ground where every day feels familiar, predictable, and safe, while their potential quietly waits in the background. Think about how many dreams have been postponed not because people lacked ability, but because staying where they were felt easier. A man wants to start a business, but his current routine feels safer. A woman wants to pursue a passion, but the familiar path feels more comfortable. Someone wants to improve their health, but the couch keeps making very convincing arguments every evening. Let's be honest, that couch deserves an award for persuasion. It somehow transforms a 20-minute walk into what feels like an impossible expedition across a desert. Comfort has a funny way of making small efforts seem enormous. And because the consequences aren't immediate, we keep choosing the easier option. One comfortable evening feels harmless, one postponed challenge feels harmless. Yet comfort compounds just like effort does. The more we avoid discomfort, the less capable we feel of handling it. The less capable we feel, the more we avoid it. Soon, our world begins shrinking without us realizing it, not because life built a cage around us, but because we slowly stopped opening the doors. I once heard about a man named Daniel who worked at the same job for nearly 20 years. He often talked about starting something of his own. He had ideas, he had skills, he had experience. Friends encouraged him, family encouraged him. But every year, he found reasons to stay exactly where he was. The paycheck was predictable, the routine was familiar, the uncertainty felt uncomfortable. So he waited. Then he waited some more. One day, a younger colleague took a risk and launched a small business. It wasn't perfect. There were mistakes, there were setbacks, there were difficult months. Yet over time it grew. Watching this unfold forced Daniel to confront a painful realization. The younger colleague wasn't necessarily smarter, he wasn't necessarily more talented, he was simply more willing to be uncomfortable. That's when Daniel understood something profound. The gap between where he was and where he wanted to be wasn't talent, it wasn't luck, it was tolerance for discomfort. Growth had been standing outside his door for years, knocking politely, and he had kept pretending not to hear it. What makes comfort especially tricky is that it often disguises itself as responsibility. We tell ourselves we're being practical, sensible, realistic. And sometimes we genuinely are. But sometimes being realistic is simply fear wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. How many times have you convinced yourself not to try something? Because the timing wasn't perfect? How many opportunities have been postponed until conditions improve? The problem is that life rarely offers perfect conditions. Growth usually begins in messy conditions, uncertain conditions, imperfect conditions. Think about learning to swim. Nobody stands at the edge of the pool waiting until they already know how to swim before entering the water. That would be absurd. Yet many people approach life exactly that way. They want confidence before action, certainty before effort, results before commitment. Comfort keeps making promises that tomorrow will be easier, but tomorrow often arrives carrying the exact same excuses as today. As people grow older, many begin to realize that some of their greatest regrets are not connected to failure at all. They are connected to avoidance. The business never started, the trip never taken, the conversation never had, the skill never learned, the chance never taken. Failure leaves scars, yes, but comfort often leaves questions, endless questions. What if I had tried? What if I had started? What if I had trusted myself? Those questions can echo for years. Yet something remarkable happens whenever a person willingly steps into discomfort. They discover that discomfort is rarely as frightening as imagination makes it seem. The first step feels awkward. The first attempt feels uncertain. The first risk feels uncomfortable. Then slowly something changes. Strength appears. Confidence appears. Momentum appears. Not because the discomfort disappeared, but because the person grew larger than the discomfort itself. The very thing they spent years avoiding becomes the doorway to a version of themselves they had never met before. The seventh truth is the cost of inaction is higher than you realize. Because the things you don't do often shape your future more than the things you do. Most people spend a lot of time thinking about the risks of taking action. What if I fail? What if I lose money? What if people criticize me? What if it doesn't work out? These questions feel reasonable, they feel protective, they feel smart. Yet, there is another set of questions that many people rarely ask. What if I never try? What if I stay exactly where I am? What if nothing changes? What if 5 years pass and I am still having the same conversations with myself? The strange thing about inaction is that it feels safe in the moment. It doesn't create immediate pain, doesn't bring immediate embarrassment. It lets you avoid uncertainty for another day. But inaction is like a slow leak in a tire. On the first day, everything looks fine. The second day, still fine. The third day, still fine. Then one morning, you're stranded, wondering how things got so bad. The problem wasn't the final moment, the problem was what was happening quietly the entire time. Many people assume that doing nothing has no cost. But life charges interest on delay. Every postponed decision, every avoided opportunity, every ignored responsibility quietly accumulates in the background. Imagine receiving a bill every day that you never open. You toss it into a drawer because it doesn't seem urgent. Day after day, month after month, the pile grows. Then one day you finally open the drawer and realize the cost has become enormous. Inaction works in a similar way. The person who keeps delaying exercise doesn't notice the price immediately. The person who avoids saving money doesn't notice it immediately. The person who postpones difficult conversations doesn't notice it immediately. Yet all those costs are growing. Growing quietly, growing patiently, that's what makes them so dangerous. Human beings are naturally wired to respond to immediate threats. A fire alarm gets our attention, a deadline gets our attention. But slow consequences, those often slip beneath our awareness. We don't see them coming because they arrive one tiny piece at a time. I remember hearing about a man named Stephen who dreamed of changing careers. He talked about it constantly. He read books about it, watched videos about it, made plans about it. He could describe every detail of the future he wanted, but every year he postponed taking the first real step. The timing wasn't right. The economy wasn't right. His confidence wasn't right. Something was always not right. Then one day he met an old friend who had started making small changes years earlier. Nothing dramatic, just one course, one application, one new skill at a time. Over the years, those tiny actions completely transformed his life. Stephen was shocked by the difference between them. Not because his friend was more talented, not because his friend was luckier. The difference was simple. One person paid the price of action. The other paid the price of waiting. And here's what many people discover too late. The price of waiting is often much higher. Action may cost effort today. Inaction often costs years. What's especially tricky is that inaction often disguises itself as preparation. We tell ourselves we're thinking things through, being careful, gathering information. And sometimes that's true. Preparation has value. But there comes a point where preparation becomes a hiding place, a comfortable shelter from uncertainty. Have you ever met someone who has been getting ready for 10 years? Maybe you've been that person in some area of life. We all have. The funny thing is that human beings can become experts at preparing for a journey they never begin. We buy notebooks, create plans, watch tutorials, organize files, research endlessly. But it's almost like packing for a vacation and then deciding to live permanently at the airport. Everything is ready except the departure. The truth is that life rarely rewards perfect preparation. It rewards movement, imperfect movement, awkward movement, uncertain movement, because movement creates lessons that thinking alone never can. As people grow older, they often discover that some of the heaviest burdens are not their mistakes, but their unanswered possibilities. The business they never started, the trip they never took, the friendship they never repaired, the talent they never developed, the words they never said, the ones they never said. These things linger differently. Failure usually gives you a story. You tried, you learned, you lived. Inaction often leaves a question mark, a permanent what if floating in the back of the mind. And those questions can become surprisingly heavy over time. Not overnight, slowly, quietly. Like carrying a backpack and adding one small stone every day. At first you barely notice the weight. Then one day you wonder why walking feels so difficult. The weight isn't coming from what happened. It's coming from everything that never happened. Everything that stayed trapped inside intention, waiting for a chance to become reality. The 80 truth is time is the most valuable thing you own because it is the one treasure you spend every day, whether you realize it or not. Most people understand the value of money. They protect it, track it, save it, invest it, they become upset when a few dollars are wasted. Yet many of the same people casually give away hours as if they are endless. That's the strange thing about time. You never see a bill for it. You never hear a cash register when it leaves. It disappears so quietly that you barely notice. One ordinary Tuesday becomes a memory. Then a month passes, then a year. Then somehow a child who once needed help tying their shoes is driving a car. A parent who seemed strong and energetic suddenly moves a little slower. The face in the mirror changes too. Not dramatically, not overnight, just gradually. Like the movement of a shadow across a wall. Time is polite, it never rushes you, it never argues with you. Thinks, no, I think. They think. It simply keeps walking, and one day you realize it has traveled much farther than you thought. When we are younger, time often feels like an ocean, endless, vast, impossible to exhaust. There is always next year, always next month, always tomorrow. As the years pass, something shifts. You begin noticing how quickly seasons arrive and disappear. Holidays seem closer together, birthdays arrive faster. Conversations start with phrases like, "Can you believe it's already been another year?" And everyone laughs because it's true. A funny thing happens when people reach a certain age. They stop measuring life only by years and start measuring it by moments. One last summer with aging parents, one more family gathering, one more chance to call an old friend, one more opportunity to chase a dream that has been waiting patiently in the corner of the room. Suddenly, time no longer feels unlimited, it feels precious, like holding water in your hands. You can enjoy it, you can use it wisely, but no matter what you do, you cannot stop it from flowing. I once heard about a successful businessman named Robert. He spent decades building wealth, long hours, early mornings, late nights. He achieved almost everything he set out to achieve. Beautiful house, financial security, professional respect. From the outside, it looked like a remarkable success story. One evening, while sorting through old boxes, he found a collection of drawings his son had made as a child. Tiny stick figures, crayon sketches, little notes that said things like, "I love you, Dad." Looking through them, Robert was overcome with emotion. Not because of what was in the box, but because of what wasn't. The years, the afternoons, the moments he had promised himself he would make up later. His son loved him, their relationship survived, yet he realized something painful. Money had given him many things, but it could not buy back a single missed afternoon. It could not rewind one soccer game, one bedtime story, one ordinary evening. That's when he understood that time and money are not equal currencies. Money can often be earned again, time cannot. What's fascinating is that people often think they lose their lives through dramatic events, but most lives are spent in small pieces. 15 minutes here, an hour there, a postponed dream, an ignored conversation, a habit repeated for years. Imagine receiving a gift of 80 summers. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Yet when you start subtracting the summers already gone, the number becomes surprisingly small, not frightening, just clarifying. Suddenly the little things matter more. The walks, the laughter, the calls you keep meaning to make, the book you've always wanted to write, the skill you've always wanted to learn, the trip you've always wanted to take. This isn't about rushing through life, quite the opposite. It's about waking up to life. Because many people spend years planning how to live while barely noticing the life already happening around them. They keep waiting for a special chapter and accidentally skip the page they are currently on. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this truth is that every morning, despite everything, life places fresh time into your hands. Not unlimited time, not guaranteed time, but real time, living time, breathing time, a chance to pay attention. A chance to create memories, a chance to repair something, begin something, learn something, appreciate something. Think of time as a garden that grows whatever you plant inside it. Plant worry every day, worry grows. Plant distractions every day, and distractions grow. Plant love, effort, curiosity, gratitude, and those things grow too. The remarkable thing is that most people already know what matters most to them. They don't need another lecture, they don't need another reminder. Deep down, they know. They know which phone call they've been delaying. They know which dream keeps returning to their mind. They know which relationship deserves more attention. They know which part of themselves has been patiently waiting for a chance to come alive. And all of those things are quietly asking for the same thing, a little piece of the time that is passing through your hands right now. As we grow older, life has a way of removing illusions. The things that once seemed urgent often fade into the background. The things we assumed would always be there begin to reveal their fragility. And slowly, quietly, we begin to understand what truly matters. Not through books, not through advice, but through experience. Through the years that shaped us, through the mistakes that humbled us, through the moments that taught us what no teacher ever could. What these truths ultimately remind us is that life is not built in the future. It is built in the ordinary moments we are living right now. The conversations we choose to have, the habits we choose to keep, the people we choose to love, the opportunities we choose to embrace, and the responsibilities we choose to stop running from. The older you get, the more you realize that fulfillment rarely comes from having everything. It comes from appreciating what you already have while still having the courage to become more. It comes from understanding that growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself, more honest, more present, more intentional, more awake. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of getting older, not the passing of time, but the wisdom it offers to those willing to listen, the wisdom to know that perfect moments do not exist, that waiting has a cost, that relationships need attention, that health deserves care, that dreams require movement, that comfort can quietly stay yours, and that every day, whether we notice it or not, we are writing the story we will one day look back on. So wherever you are in your life today, there is no need to carry regret for what has already passed. The past has done its work. It has taught its lessons. What matters now is what those lessons awaken within you. Because your life is not measured by how many years have gone by, it is measured by how deeply you live the years that remain. And maybe tonight, after all the noise settles, after the screens are turned off, after the responsibilities pause for a moment, you may find yourself sitting quietly with a simple realization that the life you have been waiting to create has never been somewhere far away. It has always been hidden inside the choices you make each day, one decision, one conversation, one act of courage, one moment of attention, one day at a time. And there's something deeply peaceful about knowing that because no matter how much time has passed, life still meets you where you are, not where you should have been, not where you hope to be, but here, in this moment, with this chance, with this day, and sometimes that is more than enough.